David Martinez introduced himself a moment ago, but I need to say something in David's regard. David is doing an absolutely amazing job right here at Parkview. And we are very grateful for it. I don't have any young, we were here, Danny and I, in April for a revival, and I could not believe all the young couples that are here and the kids. And David, God bless you for doing that. I wanted to, in case you haven't got to talk to David, be sure and talk to him. And also we have tonight, for the first time to a area men's meeting, we have Brandon Grooms, who is the new minister, a preaching minister at Forest Hill Christian Church in Oklahoma City. You're going to notice whenever you see him that they're getting a lot better looking preachers there. They got a lot better looking preachers here. And they're getting, Brandon, would you stand so we can welcome you to this area? He comes to us from Texas. It's also good to have Rob and Peggy here tonight with us. And they're here for a big event we're having tomorrow. Danny and I, a year ago this coming Sunday, it was when we resigned at Forest Hill. And we have set out for the last 12 months to reach as many preachers as we can. We have a ministry called Refresh Ministry. It's a ministry where the pastor's pastor. And I knew there was a need just because of all the years of doing it. And I'm going to be real honest with you. We have the response has been amazing. We work in Oklahoma mainly and Kansas. And some of the other areas, Texas and some other close areas, Iowa, and just places that are really close like that. But our goal is to do two things. One is to encourage the pastor or to help them through situations. And there are some really odd situations. I'm not going to take all your night talking about that, but I'm working with one man, for an example, right now in a part of Kansas that had been at a church 25 years, 65 years old. One of the people got a burr in their saddle, and got about 20 people that had a grievance over the last 25 years and paraded those in front of the elders one night, and they fired them on the spot. And it's just there's some weird stuff going on out there. We can't make everybody play fair, okay? But you know what we can do? We can show up, and we can be there, and that's what we're doing. We've designed our life to show up. Bob Russell reports that there are 1,700 churches, 1,700 pastors every month among all the denominations that lose their pastor. I mean, 1,700, Bob Russell says, leave the ministry to never come back every month. And the Christian church is just a part of that. That's all of the other. Bob Russell reports that 1,300 of those are fired. They leave and they never come back. Now, there are some others that transition that doesn't even include. And whenever Kevin Ingram told Bob what Danny and I were going to do about a year ago now, Bob said our problem in the Christian church is we have retreats and seminars and gatherings, but life doesn't happen that way. He said that we need someone that will show up. And so we can't be everywhere, but we can be in Oklahoma and Kansas. And you keep that in your prayers. Pray that God will bless that ministry. And if you want to know more about it, we'll tell you more about that at any time. It's just an amazing, amazing opportunity that we preachers are pretty guarded. And so for the preacher to respond like they have been, it's just been really amazing to Danny and I. And all of you that support us in any way, thank you very much. God bless you. I started coming to SCA meetings in 1978. And that's when I was a youth minister, moved here to Chickasha. In 1978, we had the SCA. Didn't we have those every month? Yep. It seemed like we had those every month. And I remember going there, and it was always a joy because the singing that you heard, it was just amazing. I met a lot of good friends that I still have. Many of you I met, Aubrey, a year in 1978, whenever you were coming to SCA meetings. And I got a lot of good friends from that. One friend I developed was a preacher at Marlow Christian Church, our First Christian Church in Marlow. His name was Carl Crouch. We got to know each other through the SCA. Carl and I could not have been more different, okay? Carl was serious about his ministry. And it wasn't that I wasn't serious. I enjoy having some fun. And whenever I found someone like Carl that was real serious, it made me want to have even more fun. And so Carl and I, we developed a great relationship. And I'll be honest, I had a lot of fun with Carl. For instance, we were playing golf one time here at the Chickasha Country Club. And Carl was serious about everything, including his golf game. And that was a mistake when you have me on the golf course, okay? And a guy here in Chickasha by the name of Gene Boyd gave me exploding golf balls. And so Carl teed up on the hole here at the Chickasha course that runs along the not Grand, but Country Club. And I said, Carl, what is that over there? And he looked over there and said, I don't know, and I switched his ball. And Carl, man, he reared back, and he's serious, okay? And he hits that dude in just a puff. And I said, Carl, you're hitting that ball too hard. You're going to have to back off a little bit. And so Jim Hall and I were playing with them, 2 or 3 weeks after that in Marlow. And I go out to the field and find his ball, and he hits it again, and it blows up. And about this time, Carl is thinking, I don't need friends like this, okay? But I'm still with him, okay? That wasn't the good one. The good one was, I was at Duncan. We were here 4 years, and we went to the New Testament Christian Church in Duncan to preach. They were 15, 20 people or so, but we were pumped about it because we got to preach. And so Danny and I went there, and Carl and I were still friends and all. And one day, there was a meeting day in Lawton with Western Hills years ago. And so Carl was going to come by and pick me up. But at the house where we lived in Duncan, we did not have a secretary in the office. So Danny and I had the phone hooked up so that when they called the church, it would ring at our house. Well, this is a true story. I'm sorry, but it's true, okay? I don't know why I have to qualify that, but I do, okay? But anyhow, I was taking a shower. Danny was gone. Carl was coming to get me. And the phone, I could hear the church's phone because of the church. And I knew somebody was calling the church office. And so I thought, I better get that phone. And so I jumped in. I was in the shower. And I heard it chirping. And I looked around, and there was not one towel in the whole bathroom. And so I did what any good preacher would do. I snuck to that telephone, okay? And I picked up the phone, and I was talking about it while I'm talking to these people. While I'm talking, Carl drives up. And I'm thinking, I'm okay, the door's locked. This will be no problem. I'm hiding without anything on behind the cabinet. And little did I realize that we had not locked that door. And so while Carl is there, he knocks, and then he sees me inside, so he walks on the inside. And I'm talking to this lady on the phone on this side of the counter, thinking I'm going to have to leave here in a minute. And Carl is on the other side. And so I kept talking and realized, I said, this is it. And so I thought, I'll not do anything. So I walked over and I hung up the phone. Not anything on. I looked at Carl and I said, I'll be right back. Carl would not, he never looked at me the same way. In fact, he wouldn't hardly look at me anymore, okay? Now you're thinking, how in the world could a guy so serious end up with a guy that loved to have fun? And Gary can tell you some more fun stuff than that. It's crazy. And you know why? Well, let me describe the church to you. Maybe that'll help you understand. You see, in the church, we have several different kinds of people. We have people in the church that are kind of like the sheriff. You know what I mean? They know all the rules. I mean, not only do they know all the rules, but they think you want to know all the rules. Okay? I mean, everything that comes up, they know why that should not be done. And they're the sheriff. I mean, and they are always just kind of guarding the church, for the good of the church. And they know how they think it ought to be done. And one thing I have learned in doing this for the last year, and I really don't know how many pastors we've been with, but a buku. What I've learned is there's hardly any churches in the nation that don't have at least one bully in them. Because the person that knows how it's supposed to be, for some reason thinks they have to inflict that on other people. I remember one of my bullies was in the little church I told you about a minute ago. Her husband used to be an elder in the church, but whenever he died, she no longer had a voice. Now, she had a voice when he was in the eldership, okay? But whenever he left the eldership, she no longer had a voice. And she was determined that she was going to have a voice no matter what it took. I remember the Sunday morning she called the office, and we had a movie at that church the night before trying to, it was our way, we said, come see the movies at a New Testament Christian church. And anyhow, we had some popcorn there, but we didn't have a fellowship hall. We had to rearrange the sanctuary every time we did that. And she called me up Sunday morning. She said, Gerald, I hear you had popcorn in the house of the Lord last night. I said, yes, ma'am, I did. She didn't see my knee shaking. Remember now, she knew what was right, and she was going to tell me. And she did. She commenced to tell me that the Scripture says that you should not eat in the house of the Lord. And even made reference to 1 Corinthians chapter 11. But she wasn't going to hear anything about the passage. What she was listening to was what she was saying, not to what I was saying. And I said, I'm sorry, Mrs. So-and-so, but that you feel that way about it. But unfortunately, not all of us in the church are going to agree. And so I said, for instance, There are people here like you that want drapes, and we had windows that you could just see into the sanctuary there on D Street. And I said, I'm like you. I want to have windows, coverings over those windows. And she said, no. And I said that the problem, Miss So-and-so, is that you want the drapes, but there's people here in the church that don't want the drapes. But you know what? We all don't like that. We all don't have to like the same thing. We can all like most of the things, but it doesn't have to be the same. Result was she left and never came back until I left the church. That's a true story. You may have had one of those in your church, because in every church, not only do we have the sheriff in the church, but we got to omit to let anything go happen. He's right there, or she's right there in the church too. And you see, the problem is, these show up in every church, not just one or two. If you have two people in your church, one of them is there, okay? I can almost assure you they're there. And they show up in a choir meeting, for an example. Whenever the choir is getting ready, the sheriff over here, they took some music in college, and they know their music, don't they, Jay? I mean, they know the music and where that rest is supposed to be and where it's not supposed to be. And the one over here, all they want to do is just sing. Okay? Well, that's not the only place. It's the church kitchen. I mean, you walk in the kitchen, and then the sheriff shows up. You know what they do? I'm not going to touch that one. You're going to kill your wife. But the one over here says, man, that was a good meal. But you see, some people aren't content with that. They have to have... You ever been in a board meeting like that? Where if there's somebody there that if it doesn't go their way, somebody's going to be miserable. Somebody's going to pay the price. And they know the rules, but the other one over here says, but why? One day Jesus shows up in a group just like that. I mean, he's talking to some of these guys because what they want to know is it true that somebody like me can be saved? That's what they want to know. And they've heard about it. Now Jesus is there. The scripture in Luke chapter 15 refers to them as the tax collectors and the sinners. Okay? But Jesus sizes up the crowd, and he sees them over there. They're not interested in a rule book. They just want to know, can people like me be saved? And so these guys are standing over there with their books, brought them on a two-wheel dolly, and they've been listening to Jesus the whole time as he has been describing about how that they could have life, and they said, you can't do it that way. And we're here to make sure you don't. So Jesus, what he does, he decides to tell them a story about two brothers. And these two brothers just happen to show up. Before we read, though, about the two brothers, you need to consider Psalms chapter 85, verse 10, that says, mercy and truth are met together, righteousness and peace have kissed each other. Where does that happen in your life? I described the church, but I'll bet your family reunions are a lot that way too. I bet it's that way at work. I bet there's somebody at work that knows the letter of the law, and they make sure you know the letter of the law, and somebody else over there that's having just a good time. But somewhere, what is said in Psalms 85, verse 10, somewhere it happens that mercy and truth embrace. Because I can promise you, there are people in your church that they want the truth, and there's some people over here that want mercy, and somewhere in the middle are changed lives. Where do they meet in your life? Well, Jesus tells a story about the two boys. You may remember them, but let me remind you about these two boys in Luke chapter 15. The younger one, in Luke chapter 15, verse 12 says, the younger one said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate. So he divided his property between them. Now, you do understand that whenever this guy wants his half, that the dad can't go to the bank and say, I need X number of dollars to go give my son so that he can go do whatever it is he's wanting to do. He has to sell his property, put it up on sale. Maybe he knows somebody that's interested, but he takes his property. And if I understand verse 31 right, it says the father is speaking to his older son. And he said, my son, the father said, you are always with me, and everything I have, and if I could put in parentheses there, left. Everything I have left, I gave it to you. You know, so-and-so over here, he went and spent all of his. I don't know many fathers, I don't even know if I qualify for this, that because their child wants to go off, gets wild hair, wants to go off and do something, they come back and say, you know what? I want everything that you're going to give me someday now. You say, Gerald, that doesn't happen. Oh, yes it does. I remember whenever Danny's mom sold the land down in southwest Kansas around Inglewood, and she said, if I don't have to have this to live on, I'm going to live off the interest as long as I can, but if something happens, I may have to spend that. If I don't have to spend it, you 5 kids will get that. One of the kids came up to her and said, but Mom, I'd like to have mine now. Didn't go over any well. Didn't go over any better with that house than it would at your house, because the truth is, not many of us would be willing to say, I'll just divide it and sell it right now. And you pick your half. Well, you know what they did. He spent all of his. But you remember what he does? He goes off and he spends it. Remember, he wasted, and he comes back. The pigs are eating better than he is. He comes back. Yeah, I'd rather work for my dad than work for this guy that has these pigs. You know, that'd be a lot better. I'm just going to go back to Dad. Never in the passage does it say that he tells his dad, Dad, you got any money left you can give me? All he wants to do is be in the servants' quarters. That's good enough for him. But this guy, somehow, when this boy comes back home, remember what this guy does. He has one of the biggest pout parties you've ever heard of. You remember that? I mean, the one over here, he comes back, the dad gets excited, he throws a party, and the party's all taking place. And this one over here, he is about to throw a shoe, because while this guy was out wasting Dad's money, he was sitting around all the time taking care of what he has, being a diligent son, and obeying whatever the father said to do. He did that. He was Mr. Obedient, very diligent to do whatever Dad wanted him to do. And whenever this guy comes back and gets a party, this guy's upset. Now, he's upset for a lot of reasons. I'm thinking maybe in the average church that we all feel a lot like the lady that was sitting behind me in a church not long ago. Danny and I are not speaking at a church. We go to a different church every Sunday to hear the pastor, because we love to have an opportunity later to minister to them. And so we just show up somewhere. And one Sunday, about 3 weeks ago, we showed up at a church, and this guy was preaching a sermon similar on the same topic, and he described the boy that wasted all his dad's money. And he described the other one that stayed home and took care of business and did what Dad told him to do. And this lady behind me said, that's the one I relate to. And I'm thinking maybe, if I asked you to raise your hands, and you said, and I asked you, which one do you feel like you're more like? We would feel obligated, because we've kind of said in the church, this is the one that we need to be like. We need to be diligent to do that. We don't want to be wasteful over here. And yet, if that's the case, we need to listen, because you see, this guy and this guy, they were different in many ways, but they were a lot alike, at least in one way. You know what that was? One way they were alike was that they both loved the Father for the same reason. And both of them loved him for this reason: they wanted what he had. Why did I say? Well, let me just read about the big brother. Luke 15, verse 28. The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, look, all of these years I have been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him. Do you know what he was saying? What he was saying was, he went off and spent all that money, but I was good for nothing. Let me explain that. What he's saying was, you know what, I was good all of this time, but you know, my problem is, I was good because I thought I was going to get what you had. But the problem was, He wasn't good because he loved the Father. He was good because he wanted what the Father was supposed to give him. I don't know if or when that changes. I know it changes for him. He comes back home, remorse. A lot of remorse. But this one over here, he's struggling, just like we struggle in the church. You know, sometimes somebody has gone off and they've lived a life and it's been a horrible life, and they come back, and how many years is it that we hold them at an arm's length? How long is it after they have sinned and they've come back that because we want to be sure that they're okay? What would happen if maybe somebody decided one day, I want to have Jesus, like Luke chapter 15 with the sinners and the tax collectors? They wanted to know that this is really for them. What if somebody decided to do that and they came to our church? And maybe they walked up in the glass doors and they keep beating on the glass doors over and over again, beating on the glass doors, saying, would you please let me come in? And finally somebody back in this room that they can see, they have been having a meeting on how we're going to keep these rules all intact so that nobody messes up our rules. They've been having this meeting, and they finally recognize this person on the outside that's been looking and thinking, I wish I could be in there and find out what it is about God they know. And the people inside, they see them. They say, oh, you know what? I should go answer that door. So they go to the door, and you know what they do? They slip an imaginary piece of paper underneath the door that says, whenever you meet all these requirements, when you learn to speak and a cuss word never comes out of your mouth again, whenever you can promise us and convince us that you are never going to go back in that life again, we'll let you come back to our meeting where we talk about what everyone's supposed to do. And then you wonder, do they ever get inside? You see, the problem with the older son was that when the older son, the one who knew the rules and all that, the problem with the older son was he was really disappointed because the truth was he really didn't love Dad. He loved what Dad had. That's like a Christian loving the thought of heaven, but not loving the thought of what a father could do every day of my life. Well, there's another comparison. Okay? Another comparison is, I think, truth be told, that this guy was more like his dad than that guy. You know why? You know why I think this guy was more like that? Well, what about this word prodigal? It doesn't actually show up in Luke chapter 15 in reference to this. That's just we've tagged that on. And whenever I say the prodigal son, you immediately think about this guy. Because the word prodigal, you and I have always thought it meant a wayward child. That's really not what the word prodigal means. The word prodigal, in all reality, means reckless spendthrift. Now you say, oh yeah, that's him over there. Or maybe the rest of that you'll understand when it says spend until you have nothing left. Because the news I want you to hear tonight is not which one is more right. Both of these can find great justification for the way they feel in the Scripture. Okay? They can do that. But what I'd really like for you to hear was the way that this young man and the father were the same, was that there was no limit to what that father would spend for that boy. I mean more than dividing up the property. If I could ever understand or grasp that I have a father, that there is no limit to what he'll do to bring me home, it'll change my whole concept about people that walk in the door. It'll change my whole concept about that person that I know is hungry for Jesus Christ. The man I told you about, church 25 years, and they let him go, and we were talking one day, and he said, you know what happened, little girl? He said, the guy has been, can you imagine how defeated that he is? He said, I was walking home from the church one day after all of this had happened, and there was this one lady that everybody in town had been trying to lead to Jesus Christ. He said, everybody had been trying to get a shot at this gal. And he said she came across as if she was agnostic or atheist. She didn't even know. And he walked up to the door and he just knocked on the door. And she said, hey, so-and-so, I hear that kind of some bad stuff went down at the church. And he said, sure did. He said, but I've got to do something before I leave this community. He said, what I want to know, everyone's tried, I know. You're the talk of the town. She said, I know I'm the talk of the town. He said, I just want to know, do you know Jesus? And she said, truth be told, Pastor so-and-so, I've known Jesus a long time. It's just been fun watching what Christians will do to try to convict me to become Christian. But I've known him for a long time. And I'm wondering if you and I, by what we do in the church, if there's something about us that makes him want to know that there's no limit to what God will do to bring them to Jesus. But I need to clarify for some of you in this room that you still question, if not daily, often, whether or not you could really be forgiven. On the outside, we say it loud and clear. But on the inside, we're reminded. I wonder. I really got thinking about this sermon this summer because our son Justin and Danny and I and Justin's wife Sutton, we all went on a trip. Right before we went on the trip, Justin knows that I like to take a book and read it whenever I'm off on vacation. So he gave me the book, The Prodigal God. Good read. And so I was reading this book on vacation, and I kept reading. As I kept reading through the book about the two boys and about Dad and all that, what I kept thinking was, boy, don't you wish there would have been a third son? I kept thinking that. Wouldn't it have been cool to have a son that understood agape love? You know what I mean by agape love? Well, you've heard of sacrificial, give your life kind of love. That's good. But the definition I like best is that true agape love means that you love expecting nothing in return. Wouldn't it have been neat for that father to have a son that loved him, expecting nothing in return? Wouldn't it be nice if God had those kind of children? Wouldn't it be nice if God knew that we loved him, not because he's going to make us well, give us money, give us heaven, but we loved him expecting nothing other than, I just want to be your child. I was driving into the house not long ago, out where we live on the southwest side of town, and there was this huge blackbird. And it had, I looked in its beak, and I figured out really quickly what it had. It had a little rabbit in its mouth, and it was flying away going south. And I looked down just in time to see that there was another rabbit down here scattering the little rabbits, making sure they ran off all the different places. For the rest of the time that I could, I kind of watched because these birds would show up and they would stay out in this meadow, and this rabbit stayed out there as if to say, not today. And it went on all morning. And then I told my mom about that. I had my 91-year-old mother lives next to Danny and I. And so I told Mom about that. And I remembered as I was telling Mom about something Mom saw years ago when she would go to McAllister from Clayton. She would go down the Indian Nation Turnpike. She said one day she was driving down the turnpike, and she noticed that this wolf was eating a little fawn. And the mother, the doe, was standing up here watching the wolf eat the doe, and there was nothing the doe could do. She couldn't overpower that wolf that was eating the lamb. And I thought, how many times has God watched the younger brother wasting a perfectly good life? How many times has God watched that person over here that sometimes almost thinks they're right on the same level with the Father, either run somebody off or have themselves in place that they can't even get close. And God watches both of them and just basically says, there's no limit to what I'll do to bring you home, but you need to know that it's you I love, not what you're doing. It's you I love. This is another new song. I asked Danny to come with me tonight just so I could close this with a song. It's new to us. We just recently started doing it. But I think this describes what I'm hoping. In letters of crimson, God gave his love on hillsides so far away, for you and for me. Jesus died, and those precious stories are told. I love you, I love you. That's what Calvary said. I love you, I love you. I love you, written in red. Down through the ages, God wrote his love with the same hands that suffered and bled. He's giving all he had to give, a message so easily read. I love you, I love you. That's what Calvary said. I love you, I love you. I